contract articles and annexes, a quick dive into some details of your grant agreement. And this will be a mix of issues that we from the EUKI team get a lot of questions about, or that are very important, or that are sometimes forgotten by the recipients. A little bit important disclaimer beforehand. We have new contracts since October 22, and today's presentation only refers to projects that started after that date. I actually assume that none of the projects with contracts from before October 22 are in this call, as these projects will run out within the next 6 months at the latest. But if one of you is here or maybe has 2 projects running with us, one with an old contract and one with a new contract, please keep in mind that some of the articles and rules might differ from your old contract. And of course, you can still ask us later on any question, no matter which contract you might have. But if you have an old contract, please let us know to help us answering your question correctly. And in the PowerPoint presentation, you will see the paragraph I'm referring to, and I will always give you a little moment to read the highlighted parts. So you get the reference, and then I will tell you some further aspects of this paragraph. Okay, so let's dive right in. Let's start with the 20% rule. Again, as I said, I give you a little moment to read the highlights. Okay, so the 20% rule, this is a very useful and often used rule that says that you can shift your funds between budget categories up to 20%. Budget categories are the titles within the budget, like external services, staff, transportation, and so on. And the 20% rule is only applicable if you offset the same amount in one of the other budget categories. This shift is only possible between direct costs, so not for forwarding of funds or administration costs. And your partners can shift within their own budget in the same way, but it's not possible to shift funds between the partners. In any case, we recommend that you consult with your financial advisor at EUKI before shifting to avoid mistakes, especially if this affects the staff costs. Also, you have, in any case, to report your shifts as part of your financial report. The next point is own contributions and inventory. So we often get questions about the own contribution. So here are some facts about it. On the cover note of the financial report, you can actually see the excerpt of it here. You always have to indicate your own funds that were used for the respective period. You also have to properly document your own contributions in your bookkeeping as earnings of the project. So basically in the same standard that you also document your EUKI funds. So you can submit proof of using your own funds when requested. This is important in case your project will be audited. And please also note in this context Article 1.5 of the contract, you don't see it here now in the presentation, but it's also a very important article that says that if your own contributions will be less than stated in the contract, GIZ is entitled to reduce its own grant in the same proportion. Aside from that, please be aware that you always have to submit an inventory list with your financial report for items with a value of more than 800 euro if you purchase them within the respective period. The next point is exchange rate. So we actually get a lot of questions about the use of exchange rate with foreign currencies. So if you live in a country that has a different currency than euros, you have to use the exchange rate that is on your bank voucher on the day of the transfer of the funds. And only in exceptional cases and with the previous consent of GIZ, it is possible to use a converter info euro that you might know from other funding programs. Instead of the rate on the bank transmission voucher. And also you have to use the exchange rate until all funds from this transfer have been spent completely, even if the daily exchange rate has changed over the course of time. The next point is a due diligence with your partners. So this is about the work with your implementing partners. In the contract, in the new contract, they are referred to as third-party recipients. You were all told to do an appropriate due diligence for the partners you selected, because this is, as you can see here, part of the contract and it's obligatory to do that. Please be aware that we or the auditor might take a look at the due diligence that you did. So please make sure that you documented it properly in your records. The next point is contract with your co-partners. I assume you all have a consortium agreement with your partners in any form, and according to Article 5.2, you are obligated to make sure that all the essential terms of your grant agreement with us also apply to your partners. With essential terms, we mean, for example, all the rules regarding the reporting, procurement or documentation standards. So please make sure that all these details are part in the contract, are part of the contract with your partners. The next point is responsibility as the main recipient. So this is also very important because if you are the main recipient, you are the sole contracting partner of GIZ, and as that, you are generally responsible for the proper documentation and implementation of your partners, which means you should always check the financial reports from them before forwarding all the documents to us. That also means that you should always receive the financial reports a while before the actual due date to check it properly. And also, as this question recently popped up, if vouchers will be requested from you after you submitted your financial report, those vouchers will always be requested directly from you as a main recipient, no matter if they are part of your budget or your partner's budget. So please make sure that you are in a good communication with your partner in order to receive all necessary documents promptly. Next up is one of our favorites, procurement. So I'm pretty sure that you are all aware of this article in the contract, but again, as it's super important, please comply with the GIZ procurement guidelines that you can read in Annex 4A. Most of the findings from our audits circle around the topic procurement. So it's really, really important that you know these rules by heart and check everything that is important with procurement. Next up is audit follow-up. So speaking of audit, you can always be selected for an audit at any time. When you are subjected to an audit, we will follow up with you after the audit, where we will discuss with you the auditor's recommendations. And it is mandatory that the recommendations will be implemented into your project immediately. And proof of the implementation need to be proved upon request. And next up is the keeping of documentation. Actually, this article speaks for itself. You have to keep all the documents regarding your project for 10 years after the submission of your last financial report. Next up is impairment. So this is also more or less a standard article. So in case there are significant changes to your project's risk assessment or substantial financial or technical changes, please let us know immediately so we can decide together how to proceed. And as a last point, I would like to mention the annexes. So at the very end of your contract, all the annexes are listed, and please be aware that they are substantial components of your grant agreement. So beside the budget and the proposal that you have on hand anyway, you should really make yourself familiar with these documents if you didn't properly check them yet. And you find all the annexes through this link here. And the link forwards you to our GIZ website. You see an excerpt from it here. Always go to the drop-down menu that applies to your contract starting date. And you will find all the records and templates there. The first step you should always take when searching for answers regarding the financial implementation is taking a look at Annex 4A, the financial guidelines. There is a lot of information in there with further explanation that gives you further information and details on the contract, and also some practical examples, which is really helpful. And I also highlighted in this list the inventory list. I mentioned that before because it's really forgotten often by our recipients. And again, as I mentioned before, here is the link to the procurement guidelines as well. That was it for a quick dive into the details of your contract. Thank you very much for your attention. We are now looking forward to your questions, and I hand over to Lisa for moderating us through the second part.